Good morning. How the devil are we all doing this fine day? Just had a message in to say that somebody on Facebook is watching, and they are described as Facebook user. They've said good morning. Whoever that Facebook user is, I don't know who you are, but good morning. I don't know why you're a man or woman of mystery, but thank you very much indeed for being here. And thanks to everybody else. I'll get to all of those in just a second. How am I today? You find me pretty excited, people. Yesterday afternoon, we finally officially booked our trip to ConExpo in Las Vegas. A whole week in Sin City, surrounded by some of the hottest kit on God's green earth. Under normal circumstances, that would be exciting enough. But it gets better. It looks like we will be working alongside some of the very biggest and the very best equipment brands in the world while we're there. I can't say too much at the moment, as the ink is still wet on the various agreements, but we will reveal more a bit closer to the date. The timing of all of that is perfect too. My new laptop arrived yesterday, about a week early, which is always nice, and it is now configured to allow me to broadcast this show live from Las Vegas. I've always wanted to say that. We'll tell you more about that before we jet off too, but without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. It is Thursday, the 12th of January, and as that remarkably persistent guy just said, welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, Barratt Homes freezes recruitment and the impending recession just became very real indeed. We get the new year off to an explosive start with CDI. A Spanish power station falls to the power of Liebherr and MB Crusher, and Volvo looks to make wheel loader accidents a thing of the past. We're going to get to all of that in just a second. But first, let's see who among the rich and the shameless will be celebrating a birthday on this day of days. Happy birthday! And it's many happy returns to country singer Tex Ritter and to TV stars Des O'Connor and Michael Aspel. Happy birthday also to singer Long John Baldry, heavyweight boxer Smoking Joe Frazier, actor Anthony Andrews, and to the original shock jock Howard Stern, to Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, musician and filmmaker Rob Zombie, and to the artist formerly known as Sporty Spice, Melanie Chisholm, best known to the world as Mel C. Many happy returns to them, one and all. The signs have been all around us for several months now. A reduction in workloads, a surge of activity in the recruitment sector, and a feeling of impending doom creeping through the industry. Yesterday, the fear of recession became very real indeed. Here's past me. And so it begins. Construction Inquirer is reporting today that Britain's biggest house builder, Barratt Homes, has ordered a staff recruitment freeze and has slowed new site openings in the face of falling demand for new houses. In a trading update for the first 6 months, Chief Executive David Thomas warned that the first half of the financial year had seen a marked slowdown in the UK housing market, prompting stricter controls on Barratt's spending. He said political and economic uncertainty impacted the first quarter. This was then compounded by rapid and significant changes in mortgage rates, which reduced affordability and home buyer confidence through the second quarter. A sharp fall in demand has seen the firm's order book slump from 14,818 homes to just 10,511 in the same period. Thomas said Barratt's previously strong forward order book had helped the business maintain momentum in the 6 months to December, but warned Barratt was now preparing for the impact of falling demand by slowing down its construction activity. And you can read the full story over at constructioninquirer.com. And you're back to present day me, wearing a different top. It is worth bearing in mind that the house building sector has propped up the entire construction industry for the past 4 or 5 years, as Ken Hatcher, I think it was, said in the chat there. Just having a look, there we are. All the house builders have had it good the last few years. They have had it good, but as I say, they have been propping up the rest of the industry while they've been doing so. You have to worry, though, when the biggest player in the sector takes a hit. It's going to be felt right across the industry and way beyond the house building arena. But before we all panic, let me throw this up on the screen. Before we all panic and batten down the hatches, a report today over on Construction Inquirer suggests that the recession could be just a 1.7% retraction, and that the sector could actually be back in growth by 2024. All of which pretty much mirrors what Neil Edwards said on the show on Monday. Things look pretty bleak at the moment, but the run into a general election is likely to see a loosening of the government's purse strings and the loosening of local authority purse strings as well. Either way, though, I think 2023 looks set to be a very challenging year indeed. Let's have a chat about it in our after show section, the Craic. But until then, right, who's in the mood for a bit of Komatsu dozer action? Good, because I have just the thing. Yeah, do you remember those heady days when sites were dry? Seems like an eternity ago, doesn't it? In an ideal world, the film that is about to follow would have been the first clip of this show of the new year. Because let's face it, we all wanted to start 2023 with a bang. That's well, that's a good start. Let me get rid of that and let me try it again. Remove that. Don't know why it does this from time to time, but we'll give it another go. It's become almost a cliche to say, but that's never stopped me before. Another textbook blast from the fine folks over at CDI.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
We're heading off to Spain now. Sadly, not in person. A Liebherr and MB Crusher pairing is proving to be a perfect combo in the aftermath of a power station demolition project. Check this out. Did you see the colour of that sky? I'd almost forgotten that skies came in that colour. Regular viewers might recall that just a few months ago we brought you a sneak preview of Volvo's new collision mitigation system. Well, yesterday I, together with the rest of the hacks serving this industry no doubt, received a press release to say that the system is now commercially available, and this is how it works.
The new Volvo collision mitigation system is an in-house developed system designed to support safe operation of Volvo wheel loaders. Wheel loaders spend an average of 40 to 50% of their working time reversing, putting high demands on the operator paying attention to the surroundings. The collision mitigation system assists operators under certain circumstances while working in reverse by automatically braking the machine when it approaches an unnoticed object, helping to reduce the impact of collisions or avoiding them altogether. The optional collision mitigation system is available for wheel loaders in the range of L110H up to L260H and requires that the machine is equipped with OptiShift and radar detect system. Though the operator still needs to pay full attention, the system initiates braking, alerting the operator that intervention is required. This intelligent system will remember the last slope the machine climbed, allowing reversing down without activating the assisted braking. However, the collision mitigation system can be temporarily deactivated using a switch in the cab if specific site conditions demands it. The collision mitigation system is yet another example of Volvo's commitment to safety.
The Innovation Centre at Volvo Construction Equipment just doesn't know when to stop, does it? Now, if you'd like to know more about that collision mitigation system, I've just posted a link in the chat. Go and take a look. As Ken Hatcher has just said, should be standard, really. Yep, totally agree. Maybe one of these days it will be standard. Now, let me roll one of these.
Sorry to interrupt the guy with the funny glasses, but if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button as it helps our channel. Or, better still, share this video with a friend or a colleague. Thank you. Right, back to Beardy.
Right, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what we're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, then please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Have a great day, and thanks for watching. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll see you on the other side of this for what we now know as the Craic. Good. The keyboard to one side so that we can all have a very good chin wag. Hope we're all doing well today. I'm going to go very, very quickly to the almost the bottom of the chat. Peter Haddock. Morning, Peter. Thanks for being here. Podcast editing today for a new podcast with Bill Hill at the Lighthouse Club and Trevor Stephen on mental health. Oh boy, is that well timed. I'm in discussion at the moment with the fine folks over at Mates in Mind to do something very similar. I think the current state of the industry and its impact upon job security and the like is going to see a very, very sharp rise in mental health issues, I'm sad to say. So your timing, Peter, as is generally the case, is absolutely perfect. Right, let's go back to the very beginning. I think Ken Hatcher was the first off the mark this morning, and he has rain. We have rain as well. I live in a cul-de-sac, and just over the road here there is a... The road I live in looks like a frying pan, so at the end there's a big round pit. There's a puddle that's been here for, I reckon, 3 weeks now, and every morning I look out the window, and every morning it gets just a little bit bigger. Rain hasn't stopped here. No idea who our Facebook user was. If somebody would like to go and have a look in the chat, maybe you could let me know, but good morning, whoever you are. Peter Ferguson was here as well. Good morning, all chaps and chapettes. There's an old... get me started. There is an ultra rock song called We Stand Alone, in which Midure sings about gigolos and gigolettes. Peter Ferguson just updated that to chaps and chapettes. But thank you very much indeed for that. Nick Drew's in the house as well. Morning, Nick. Hope you're fit and well today, my friend. Gary Muirhead is here as well. Morning, Mark. Morning, everyone. Sadly, yes, it is morning. Seems to come around awfully quickly. I have to admit, over the Christmas period, I did spend an awful lot of time having lie-ins in the morning. I think the record was about 10:30 before I finally emerged from the pit. It's been a bit of a shock getting back into getting out of bed on at a reasonable time. Mick Norton says, "Good morning, Mark. Looking forward to the Craic. The Craic is here before you right now." I thought I'd stir the pot this morning, and I threw this one out as our question of the day. Do you have any plans to read Prince Harry's book? Like the blue touch paper, stand back, and yeah, it did exactly what I expected to. Ken Hatcher has no intentions of reading it. Peter Ferguson says, question of the day, spare parts for sale. Should say very good morning to Jim Turner. Morning, Jim. We'll come back to Jim in just a second. I know we've had a few more people commenting on the Prince Harry book. Gary Muirhead, I think, sums up the not the views of the nation, but certainly the views of the Breakfast Show crowd. No, not interested unless it's got pictures of diggers in it. Quite agree. Jim Turner is equally adamant that he's not going to be reading it. Definitely not. Undecided about Prince Harry. Big money project set up by the Windsors, he reckons. I'd say the fallout and the reconciliation has got to be good for about 500 million quid. You could well be right, and I wouldn't put it past them one bit either. Sticking with Jim Turner, he enjoyed the tune that we put over that Komatsu video. He had a listen to the band that I suggested. That's Passcode. Great music, but I can't stand the shouting singing. I told you it was a bit of a mixed bag, didn't I? But yeah, listen. Each to their own. If I tell you, I put the Passcode video is a band called Passcode. They're Japanese, and there is one particular song called "Flavors of Blue." Probably means a whole lot more if you're Japanese, I guess. And I put it onto YouTube the other night, and I just sat there like this. It's such a weird mishmash of musical styles. So if you fancy going to have a listen to that, please do so. Mick Norton says Persimmon cannot stimulate their house sales even with 10 months mortgage free offer to potential buyers. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think the government and the banking sector helped itself or helped the house building sector with its temporary moratorium on mortgages back end of summer last year. That's obviously had a knock-on effect. But as I said earlier, you've got that issue with Persimmon. Barratt Homes, the biggest house builder in the UK, is now freezing recruitment, and it is slowing new site openings as well. And obviously that then has a knock-on effect. If there's no houses being built, chances are we won't need roads to serve those new homes. We won't need a new school in the area to serve those children that are in those new homes. We won't need waterworks and electricity. We won't need maybe demolition to make way for that construction. It really does have a huge knock-on effect, and I think we're starting to see that now. Let's have a look. Lou Carney is equally adamant she's not going to be buying Prince Harry's book. Absolutely not. Spoiled child who thinks he's bigger than the monarchy. I do find it ironic that you're referring to Prince Harry as a spoiled child. Is that not the entire royal family, or did I miss a meeting? But her final comment, grow up, is how I'm going to put that. But you can see on the screen exactly what she said. Yeah, I think that's... I actually put on Twitter yesterday. I'm trying to remember a time when I could switch it on Twitter and not be met with talk of Prince Harry. And I genuinely, I don't care. I really, it's a whole other world. I don't care. Mark Whiting's here as well. Morning, Mark. Thank you very much indeed for joining us at this bleak and rainy day. Dan Cullen is another person that is not going to be on the Prince Harry mailing list. No chance. She has no mental health issues using all this malarkey to get rich. They destroyed any capability of being decent people. Move on. Yeah, I wish the world would move on. Does it not make you wonder when you watch the TV news? There's lots and lots of talk at the moment about Prince Harry and the fallout from his new book, Spare. There's lots and lots of talk about what's going on in Westminster. There's lots of talk about, particularly on Sky News, talking about the way that some MPs are boosting their income with sidelines, kosher or otherwise. Does anyone care? Does anyone care? Does anyone really take any great I sometimes feel like there's a disconnect between the news channels and actual people. You know, we're out here worried about the cost of living and energy crises and strikes that prevent some of us from getting to work, and the fact that we might end up at hospital where there are no nurses because the nurses are out on strike. Those, I think, are genuine concerns. What somebody in a royal family is saying in a book, which I can't imagine being even remotely interesting. Does anyone care? Or is this just the media misconstruing what we all actually care about? We're back to Peter Haddock again. Looking forward to hearing that podcast, Peter. I have to say, one thing that I did do, aside from teaching myself some fancy video editing tricks over the Christmas period, I did catch up on an awful lot of podcasts, and really got a bee in my bonnet about podcasts at the moment. I love video. I love being able to talk down the camera and everything else, but there's just something about audio. It's just, I think maybe because it's played straight into your ear holes, there is something very, very personal and very inclusive about the audio format, and particularly I think on subjects like mental health, you kind of need to just tune out and listen to the discussion, which is something Peter does very well indeed. So go and give that a when it lands, or do yourself a favour, go over to Apple Podcasts, assuming you're on Apple. Find Contact with Media, click the subscribe button, and then your phone will notify you next time Peter drops an episode. Save you all going to look for it. Let's have a look. Ken Hatcher reckons that things like the collision mitigation system should be standard. You know the way these things go, Ken. There was a time when things like Bluetooth wasn't a standard. It pretty much is now. GPS wasn't a standard. It's headed that way. Reversing cameras wasn't a standard. Headed that way. I think the natural laws of competition among the construction equipment manufacturers will make that a probability at some point in the future. Yes. Mark Vegas. Yes. Became very real yesterday afternoon. It's a weird idea, really. I mean, I've done ConExpo 7 times probably in the past. I've done a couple of mine expos as well. Been to Vegas many times, but the last time I was over there, which was just before the lockdown occurred, I was there with my son Fred, who's over in the chat. Also there with Peter Haddock and Nick Drew as well, but my wife was in tow as well. So I'd been to Vegas 8, 9, 10 times. She'd never been. She came along, basically spent the entire week strolling up and down the strip, popping in and out of shops while I was at work, but she had a great time. And as a result of her having a good time, I had an equally good time. So really looking forward to it. We've been holding off, not because the money wasn't in the bank. It was, thankfully, but there was a few bits and pieces that were kicking around, some deals with some big manufacturers of equipment, and we nailed a couple of those yesterday and just said, okay, the time is right, let's get it booked. Unfortunately, the cost of the flights wasn't too bad, actually. Probably about £100 more than we paid this time 3 years ago. Cost of the hotels, though, is way up. I don't know if that's a reflection on post-COVID. Obviously, Las Vegas, like other hospitality hotspots, was hit pretty badly during the recession, during the pandemic rather. Maybe they're trying to recoup, but maybe it's just the ConExpo effect. But either way, we're going to be there from Saturday to Saturday. So yeah, we're taking the entire show. We're going to be in the show ground, should I say, 2 days before the show opens, doing some bits and pieces there, and then we will be doing the show itself. And the plan, I've said it before, but the new laptop is now finally here now, and it's all configured and ready to rock and roll. So the plan basically is I will spend probably 3/4 of each day, hopefully each day, going around collecting video footage, get myself off to maybe the press office or back to the hotel, the Luxor Hotel, sit down, edit some together, and then actually blast one of these shows out, which will be in the middle of the night for you guys, but it'll be early evening for me. And then once I've done that, I can then program the system to rebroadcast that at 10 a.m. So although I won't be here or there. I won't be available to actually be in the chat. You'll be able to see exactly what it is that I'm seeing. Let's have a look. What happened? This is Mick Norton. What happened to the old days when collision mitigation was a well-trained operator would get his arse off the seat, make safe, and get out, check for all-round safety? There's a whole discussion to be had about that. And I know where you're coming from, Mick, and I have to say I am of the same mind by and large. Let me say for the record, anything that makes sites safer, count me in. So whether that's reversing cameras, 360-degree cameras, things like the systems from the likes of X-Watch and all of those sort of things, the collision mitigation system there from Volvo, the JCB equivalent, I am 100% all in on all of those. But none of them should be necessary. And it takes me back to the advent of the likes of Craic and Lenhoff, the quick couplers that we all know and love today. They're fantastic. They are fantastic. But why were they invented? Because operators basically couldn't be asked to get out of the cab, particularly when it's chucking it down with rain, and drive a pin home to make sure that their bucket or their chosen attachment would stay on securely. That's what drives, that's what drove the revolution in, as I say, things like Lenhoff, Oil Quick, Steel Wrist. All of those systems were driven by the fact that operators wouldn't do what operators should do. Why do we have flashing beacons on machines to notify that the operator has his seatbelt on? Because a lot of them don't. And I get the impression that a lot of this safety system development is done out of sheer desperation from the manufacturers, but more specifically from the equipment owners themselves. If toolbox talks and safety briefings will not convince somebody to put their seatbelt on while they're driving a dumper or whatever it might be, then something has to give, and maybe that has to be an additional beacon on the roof of the machine. If somebody will not get out of the cab while it's pouring with rain to drive home a pin to hold on the bucket safely and securely, then maybe we need an automatic quick coupler. And maybe if operators aren't looking around themselves, then maybe collision mitigation is precisely what we need. It seems crazy. And particularly, I think, in terms of wheel loaders. Now, I understand why Volvo have applied this to wheel loaders. Obviously, wheel loaders spend a fair bit of time in reverse, and they move at some pace, not like a tracked excavator or a compactor, which are very slow-moving indeed. But I understand that. But when you think about the actual operation of a wheel loader, you think about the applications. Waste transfer station. There should not be people, pedestrians or otherwise, workers as well. They should not be walking around that machine while it's in operation. Quarries. There should be nobody for miles around. Timber yards. There should be nobody walking around. The actual recycling centres. There should be nobody walking around while a wheel loader is in operation. Sadly, however, there are people walking around. And I have to say, the one thing I will say is that collision mitigation system, making that machine based. I do have a slight concern about some of these wearable systems. I've tried a few out. They're brilliant. They are absolutely brilliant. But all the time, bearing in mind what we've just said, or what I've just said about the fact that operators and workers can't necessarily be trusted to keep themselves safe. Can we honestly be sure that an operator or an operative working close to a wheel loader will remember to put on the wearable, be it on his jacket, around his wrist, on his hard hat, that will trigger a warning in the wheel loader? Can we trust that? Sadly, I don't think we can. We can't even trust people to charge them. If you turn up on site, you've got a wearable device that alerts the operator of an excavator or a wheel loader, but you forgot to recharge it overnight. then you may as well just throw it in the bin because it serves no purpose whatsoever. And unfortunately, that is the industry in which we operate. Peter Haddock says, brilliant, Mates in Mind, and is another great charity. They really are. Yeah, we've worked with them in the past. Looking forward to doing so again as well. 11 o'clock, Dan Cullen finished adding guys to his groups. Sign of the times, I'm afraid. Andy's Man Club is also coming to Plantworks. Do you know, it's interesting you should say that, Lou. Excuse me, I'm just adjusting my headphones. I know it's behind the head. I won't bother you. Just adjusting my headphones. Somebody actually said that recently on LinkedIn. Exhibitions like Plantworks, like Bauma, like Conexpo, and Exec Hire Show, and all of these shows, would it be a bad idea to actually have some sort of representation from a mental health charity or multiple mental health charities? Hats off to Plantworks for getting Andy's Man Club along to that. Top notch. You go where the audience is, and if there's going to be 10, 15, 20,000 people going through the doors or through the gates of the East of England showground to Plantworks, and if half a dozen of them go and put their head round Andy's Man Club's door and say, I need a bit of help, Plantworks will have been worthwhile. Plantworks will be worthwhile regardless, but even more so having done that. So hats off to Plantworks. Let's have a look. Yeah, going back to Dan Cullen. Anyone needs workers, please get in touch. I think the bigger problem is workers needing work. I think that's going to be our issue. Okay, so we now know who the mystery Facebook user was. It was Lou Carney. I don't know why it didn't come up with your name either, but thank you for being here anyway. Jim Turner, he's the sport child because he's griping and the rest are being quiet. Very quiet indeed. Which, being the cynic that I am, makes me think that some of what he's saying is quite possibly based in truth. Then again, maybe they're just rising above. Honestly, don't know. Let's have a look. I remember back in the day when you were going to call this part of the show the Big Brew, but I do enjoy the crack. It was going to be the Big Brew. Yeah, we were talking to a company about actually sponsoring this part of the show. It's hard to sell this. It's quite easy to sell the main part. Well, I say easy. It's okay to sell the main part of the show, because if I were to sit down with somebody and say, it's me, then there's some video, then it's me, then it's some video, then it's me, then it's some video. That's easy. You can sell that very easily. But bearing in mind the way that this part of the show tends to work, I know he's not here, even though it's a Thursday. I know he's not here. But those that have been around for a long while will know that we did one of these once, and we ended up talking about donkey ownership with our friend Al Grierson over in Luxembourg. It's hard to go to a potential sponsor and say, it's fantastic, we have all these people with fantastic insights and great questions and fantastic comments, and sometimes we talk about donkeys. It's a hard sell, trust me. So yes, the Big Brew, that was the plan. But they saw it and they decided, do you know what? I think I'll leave it. So we can now control it. It is now, henceforth, this is the crack. Mick Norton says, Mr. and Mrs. Sussex, a fantastic fairy tale, though who cares about a divorced woman in her late 30s rescuing a prince from his prison? If I were to... If somebody put a gun to my head and somebody said, you need to choose sides in all of this, I would be inclined to choose Harry's side. Just the way I am. Shoot me down if you will. But even saying that, the Prince's prison, it's not a bad prison, is it? Buckingham Palace. You know, if you were going to be locked up, I can think of worse places to be locked up. Dan Cullen, a lot of operators sit on top of seatbelts, not many enforce wearing them. No, you're absolutely right. It never ceases to amaze me, the ingenuity of some, and I stress some, plant operators to get around safety systems. To take the trouble, now bearing in mind they'll have driven to site probably and worn a seatbelt because There's a big fine if you don't. They'd have driven to site wearing a seatbelt, and then they've got in the seat of their cab, and rather than actually putting the belt across their lap, they've locked it and then sat on it. Where is your head when you're doing that? And I remember years ago going up a tower crane. I'm not so sure I'd be keen on that now, mainly because the old lungs couldn't take it, but going up a tower crane. And there was a system, this is back in the late 80s, I would guess. There was a system on board to warn the operator of overextending or overloading. And there was a screen, fairly primitive, but there was a screen that flashed. But there was also like a speaker above his head that would sound an alarm. And I heard all about this while I was at ground level from the manufacturer. I think it was Wolf Cranes back in the day. And then we went up the crane. And there, lo and behold, there was the speaker with a big lump of rag stuffed in it, so the operator didn't have to listen to the audible alarm. You're hundreds of feet in the air in a tower crane. There's a device there that will warn that you are potentially overloaded and at risk. I know what I'll do. I'll stuff a rag in it. And going back to Mick Norton's point about collision mitigation, all the time that there are operators of that ilk in the industry, the likes of Volvo and JCB and all of the and Liebherr as well, will have to continue to develop systems like that. It is idiot proofing is basically what it is. Seems crazy, but that's where we are, I'm afraid. Dan Cullen, in my opinion, he's a test tube baby. Might explain the ginger hair. Don't know where his bread's buttered. He is a problem child. I would imagine there is quite a lot of talk about that around Buckingham Palace. The problem child bit, certainly. I don't know. Gary Muirhead. So I have some sad and devastating news on this subject. As you are aware, it is Thursday, and traditionally this has been World Al Grierson Day. Al Grierson is a full-time teacher and a part-time contributor over here. They've changed his timetable, and he won't be here on Thursdays until at least Easter. So, for the time being, World Al Grierson Day is no longer World Al Grierson Day. It feels like a personal loss, I have to say. It won't be the same. I said that to him last night. It will not be the same without him, without his Luxembourgian insights and his donkey fancying. But that's where we are. Yeah, we've lost one of our key members, ish. He'll still be watching it on Catch Up, and he's still part of our WhatsApp group. Speaking of which, if you would like to be part of our WhatsApp group, you can do so by following the link that I'm just about to post in the chat. You can do that whenever you feel like. That's the wrong one. That's the one I wanted. Jim Turner. I used to be guilty of not wearing seatbelts when I was a young fella bombing around 3 counties on a 3CX, but since being on machines with alarms, it's become second nature to put it straight on. Yeah, of course it has. Much the same as cars, you know. And I still recount the story of going fishing with my dad, and my dad had a car for a while that had a sunroof, and we would drive to and from, including bits of motorway work, with my head poked out. Literally stood on the front seat with my head poking out the roof. Seatbelts they weren't even an option. They were almost ornamental back in the day. You know better. And just as a very small aside, many years ago, I would take a wild stab at 1988. I was invited out on to one of the test drilling rigs for the Channel Tunnel. Effectively, there were a bunch of rigs on the line of the Channel Tunnel. They were all doing test boring to make sure that the rock below the seabed was substantial enough to withstand being bored through by the Channel Tunnel. As it turns out, the rock was fine. But I was flown out onto one of those rigs to see the operation out at sea. Great day out. But one of the things that I remember very, very clearly was there was me and probably half a dozen other journalists, including a couple from the Times and the Telegraph as well. And we're all stood there, notebooks in hand and various other bits and pieces. and we'd all been given no high vis or anything like that, but we'd all been given hard hats, and it was blowing a hoolie, as my mum used to say, blowing a hoolie, very, very windy, hard to keep your hard hat on, and a bit of a pain in the rear end. And one guy took his hard hat off. Guy worked for the Telegraph, actually, took his hard hat off, and the guy that was doing the guided tour said, "Excuse me, get the hard hat back on." He put it back on. I reckon something like about 40 seconds later, a steel bolt, fell from about, 100 foot above his head and hit him square on the head. Split the hard hat in two. He barely even noticed. There was just an almighty ping and a crack. He took the hard hat off, and there was a hole, but there was also a complete split in it, and his head was fine. I don't think that guy would ever need reminding to wear a hard hat ever again. Not that people on the Telegraph get to do so regularly, but sometimes you do just need that reminder. How many people have we lost over the years for not wearing seatbelts? And particularly when you think about machines like dumpers. We've all seen the YouTube videos and the TikTok videos of the operator not wearing his seatbelt, approaching a pile a bit too quickly, going to dump, the machine stops suddenly, and all of a sudden your man is over the steering wheel, over the skip, and he's largely buried, and quite possibly with a couple of broken bones in for good measure. Why would you not? Why would you risk it? How hard is it to press a button to release it to get off the machine, and then to do this? So, as I said, you think about it from a car point of view, it's second nature. If I set off from my drive without a seatbelt on, I've forgot it, and my brain is saying, hang on, there's something missing. Exactly the same, you get on an aircraft. Who would get on an aircraft and buckle up the seatbelt and put it under themselves? Nobody in their right mind. And yet, what is that? Is that stupidity? Possibly. Is that machismo? Look how manly I am. I am going to risk my life by not wearing a seatbelt. Well done on that. I'm sure that will stand you in good stead while you're in hospital. Just seems crazy, as I say, it is one of those things that is constantly driving innovation in this industry. That bit I can buy into. The constant idea of innovation to make things ever safer. I am 100% behind that. But it would be so much easier if people just used their brains, and that used to be the case. Don't go near a machine. The end. That was it. But there was no conversation to be had. There were no exceptional rules. There were no times during the day where it was okay to walk behind a wheel loader while it was in operation. You just don't do it. That is the end of the conversation. But all the time that is not enforced, as Dan Cullen said a bit earlier. All the time it's not enforced. Unfortunately, we will need systems like that, collision mitigation system from the fine folks at Volvo. Expected to see a lot more of that kind of thing over in Las Vegas, to be perfectly honest, as I'm sure Peter Haddock will vouch for if he's still in the chat. I think all of us came away from the last Con Expo absolutely blown away by the equipment, but even more blown away by the level of tech that was being applied to that equipment as well. I came away thinking more about the software than about the hardware, and that doesn't happen very often. So there we are. One final thing. I was reminded yesterday that this year, this year is a Stein Expo year. For those that don't know, Stein Expo is the German equivalent of Hillhead. That's taking place in August, and we're eyeing that from a distance. Obviously, Hillhead is one of our favourite shows. I went to the Stein Expo probably about 15 years ago, not been back since, purely because of workloads and stuff, but I would very much like a trip out to Stein Expo. So if any German manufacturers are watching and would like to invite me out, all expenses paid and with a couple of bratwursts thrown in for good measure, you know where to find me. Right, people, that's nearly an hour. Go do whatever it is that you do. Please stay safe. Put your seatbelts on, wear your hard hat, put your high vis on. If any of your friends or colleagues are not doing that, tell them that I said that they should. And yeah, be safe out there. And try and stay dry. and look after your mental health, and so on down the line. That's an interesting one. I thought Hillhead lacked a bit this year. Personal feeling? Totally disagree. I do wonder if my enjoyment of Hillhead was increased by the fact that I hadn't done one for longer than usual. I think was it 3 or was it 4 years between Hillheads because of COVID? But I had an absolute blast. I thought it was a really good one. Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. The demo side was a bit quieter, but again, because I think Finning chose to concentrate. We're going back full circle here. They chose to concentrate on technology with SciTech and that kind of thing. So there was less CAT equipment, and that was always the way that the far end of the show worked. There'd be a CAT demo, there'd be a Liebherr demo, a Volvo demo, and Doosan and so on down the line. You take that CAT part out, and all of a sudden it was. I would agree with that. Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that at all. Machines are not dogging on against each other. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But again, I think that is, with so little to choose, and I am going to wrap this up in a minute, but with so little to choose between the various top dozer brands, between the various top wheel loader brands, between the various top excavator brands, I think technology has become something of the USP among the manufacturers. So I wouldn't be at all surprised. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see more and more technology-based stands, at Bauma, at ConExpo, even at Plantworks, and I know Plantworks are planning a big technology area as well. Last time I went, Dave's Volvos were swatting stone about rapid. Yeah, they were. But again, I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but they even had a double thickness perimeter fence this time. Obviously, safety is a key concern, particularly when you've got wheel loaders of 20, 30, 40 tons rolling around the place. And yeah, maybe the call for safety and the desire to show off technology has rather taken away from that, maybe. Making every other machine look slow in comparison. Yeah, there's always that show stealer, isn't there? Or the showstopper, as they say. Going back to my SED days, Doug Potter was always the showstopper there, pushing machines to their absolute limit and bringing the show to a standstill as a result. I think that's a thing from days gone by, and I don't think we'll see the likes again. Who knows? Right, enough people. Go have a very, very good day. I need to go and do something. I don't even know what I'm doing today, to be perfectly honest. Pretty much the same as most days, but I'm sure I'll be back here at 10 a.m. tomorrow for the final show of the week, and then we're building up to our evening show, which will be Wednesday next week, which is Wednesday the 18th, 7 p.m. We're looking at all things futuristic, or predictions actually. So if you've got any predictions for equipment and the industry, let me know and I'll try to include them in our show. But until then, have a great day everyone, look after yourselves, and I'll see you very soon. All the best.